everyone, welcome back. Today we will continue with Class 9 Chemistry Chapter 2, Pure Substances and Mixtures. In the previous classes, we have already learned about pure substances and mixtures and the different types of mixtures, that is homogeneous mixtures and heterogeneous mixtures. And we have also learned about solutions, solute, solvent, etc. And in today's classes, we will learn about separating pure substances from mixtures. And first here we have separation by centrifugation. So if you want to filter an impurities present in a solution, what we normally do is that we filter it or we separated it by filtration process using filter paper. So but sometimes the particles of impurities or the impurities particles that is present are very small inside. So these impurities, when we filter it using a filter paper, since they are very small, they can pass through the filter paper. So it is impossible to filter this kind of solution. So in this situation, what we can do is that we can separate these impurities using a separation by centrifugation method. So what happens in this separation by centrifugation method is that we put the solution, the impure solutions, in a test tube, and it is rotated repeatedly using a centrifugation machine known as centrifuge. So this centrifuge use the centrifugal force. So when this is rotated repeatedly, the impurities or the suspended particles, being heavier, they are deposited at the bottom of the test tube, and the pure substance or the liquid, which is lighter, they will be at the top. So these impure particles are at the bottom and the pure particles are at the top. And in this way, we can separate the impurities using a centrifugation method. Cream is separated from milk using this centrifugation method. Cream being lighter, it will be at the top when it is rotated repeatedly. And milk being heavier, it will be at the bottom. Now let us see the application of separation by centrifugation method. First, we have diagnostic laboratories for blood and urine tests. So when you go to the hospital and the doctor asks you for taking blood tests or urine tests, so what happens is that the lab technician, they take your blood sample and they separated your blood and the impurities. And after that, when they have the pure blood, they can analyze it under the microscope and they can identify the viruses or the bacteria present in your blood. Number 2, diaries and home to separate butter from milk. So centrifugation method is also used for separating butter from milk. Now, number 3, washing machines to expel out water from wet clothes. In your home, you might have seen washing machines. In this washing machine, when we put in our clothes, it is rotated repeatedly. So when it is rotated repeatedly, the dust particles or the dirty or the impurities present in your clothes are expelled out. So they will be all for separation by centrifugation method. Now let us see separation by sublimation method. And in this one, in the previous class, we have learned that there are some substances like ammonium chloride, iodine, camphor, naphthalene, and anthracene. They are sublimable. That means they change their state from solid to gaseous directly and from gaseous to solid directly without changing into liquid. We know that most of the substances can change their state from solid, liquid, and gas. But these sublimate substances, they change their state from solid to gaseous directly and gaseous to solid directly. So if we have a substance which contain a sublimable substances, and we want to separate this sublimable substance from the other impurities, so what we can do is that we can heat it, and when we heat it, the sublimable substance, suppose let us say ammonium chloride, will evaporate into gases directly. So since we plug this hole with a cotton plug, the sublimable substance will be deposited here, and that way we can separate it from impurities. Now next, let us see separation by chromatography. So chromatography is a technique used for identification and separation of solutes which are present in a solution in small quantities. So this chromatography method is used for separating substances present in a very small quantity, and this chromatography, the word chroma is taken from the Greek word chroma, which means color. So what happens in this separation by chromatography method is that we have, let us say, a jar containing water. So we have an ink, a black ink or dye, and this is a filter paper, and this filter paper, the tip of the filter paper touch the water. So what we want to do here is that we want to separate this black ink or dye into its different constituent or shades of colors. So we know that this black ink or dye is also made of different types of colors. Different types of colors are combined together and it forms a black ink or dye. So if you want to separate it, we cannot use evaporation or sublimation or other separation method, since they are present in very small quantities. So what we do is that we put this filter paper and the tip of the filter paper touch the water. So we put a black ink. So this filter paper, it will absorb the water like this. It will absorb the water, and when the water rises, it takes the different colors and leave it behind like this. So in this way, we can separate colors using chromatography method. Now let us see the application of chromatography. Some of the important applications of chromatography are separation of color substances, dyes, and pigments in solution. So if you want to separate color substances or different colors, we can use chromatography method. In forensic science, to detect and identify trace amounts of drugs in the contents of bladder or stomach and blood. When we say in forensic science, suppose when a person is dead and the forensic doctor wants to identify the cause of the death. In forensic science, to detect and identify trace amounts of drugs in the contents of bladder or stomach and blood. So when a person is dead and the doctors wants to identify the cause of the death, what we can do is that we can use chromatography method to identify if there are any drugs present in the blood or bladder or stomach of the dead person. So the doctors can identify the cause of the death using chromatography method. Number 3, to separate small amounts of products of chemical reaction. So in a chemical reaction, if there are the chemical presence are in very small quantities, we can separate it using this chromatography method. Now let us see purification by crystallization. So crystallization is a technique that separates a pure solid in the form of its crystals from a solution. The process of crystallization is used to purify a large number of water-soluble solids. So this crystallization process or this method is used for purifying solids which are soluble in water. That means solid which can be soluble in water. And this crystallization method is used for taking common salt from seawater. Common salt from seawater, it contains many impurities. So to get a pure common salt, crystallization method is used for purifying it. So this common salt, we get it from the seawater and we evaporated the water and the common salt is left behind. But this common salt is not pure yet. There are still many impurities present in it. So what we can do is that we put this common salt, let us say, in a test tube, and some amount of water is added. So now we can heat this common salt or this solution containing common salt. So when we heat it, we make the solution become saturated. So when it is saturated, a glass or something is put in. So this common salt will be crystallized in the glass rod. So we put in a glass rod in the saturated solution. So in the glass rod, the pure common salt is crystallized and the impure particles are still dissolved in the solution. So in this way, we can get a pure common salt by the process of crystallization, purification by crystallization. And this purification by crystallization is used not only for common salt, but to separate other pure substances from their impurities also. Now for your assignment, 1. What separation techniques will you use to separate butter from milk? Write the applications of separation by centrifugation method. What is sublimation? What is chromatography? Write some important applications of chromatography. What is purification by crystallization? That will be all for today. And I want all of you to do your assignment And before you do your assignments, I want you to go through your textbook, and that will be all for today. Thank you.